Welcome to the 15th Annual Grants Training Seminar, Nonprofit Roadmap to Success. I'm Kara Fogarty. I'm with the Nonprofit Institute at the College of Southern Maryland. We have an exciting morning planned for you, and I want to start by thanking everyone for joining us today. I believe people are still going to be joining as I'm speaking, so we'll just let folks keep on joining. Please note, this event is being recorded and it will be available for on-demand viewing. We will send that to everyone as well as a survey. We sincerely hope you take a few moments to fill out that survey. Your feedback is really important to us and it's helpful. It helps inform future grants training workshops. So thank you in advance. I would like to take a moment and thank our co-sponsors. This year we have the Maryland Governor's Grants Office, the Charles, St. Mary's, and Calvert County Public Libraries, and the Charles County Government, and of course, the College of Southern Maryland. We usually hold this training seminar at the college's La Plata, Maryland campus, but here we are on Zoom. And for some of you, being on Zoom allows you to attend this seminar, whereas you may not have been able to attend in person. So that's exciting. I mention this because we have people joining us today from across the country. There are 151 people registered for today's training, and people are still joining us, so welcome to everyone. My name is Kara Fogarty. I'm with the Nonprofit Institute at the College of Southern Maryland. The Nonprofit Institute works with nonprofit organizations throughout the Southern Maryland region, helping to enhance their effectiveness and achieve success in fulfilling their missions. We provide many programs designed to meet an organization's interests and needs. Things that we offer include training classes and workshops like this, collaborative community calls, special interest group meetings, many networking opportunities. We offer operational advice and insight, one-on-one consultations, resources to help guide your work, and an annual conference. Speaking of the annual conference, save the date, February 25th, 2021. That's the date of the 11th Annual Nonprofit Institute Conference. It will be virtual via Zoom. And by the way, I'm really excited to announce that the conference will be free. No registration fee, so save that date, February 25th, 2021. I would like to introduce a few people who are with us today. First up, my colleague, Robin Finicom, is here. Robin, want to say hello?
Good morning, everyone. Glad to see you here.
So during the seminar today, she will monitor the chat and I will monitor the Q&A, and we'll get to that in a moment. Also with us today is Jennifer Colton, the director of the Maryland Governor's Grants Office, and she has some welcoming remarks for us. Jennifer.
Hi, good morning. Thank you, Kara. I just wanted to say welcome to everyone on the line. It looks like we're getting lots of participants joining. We're at 54, so we got another 50 or so that we hope to have, and I am excited. This is, I think, my third time participating in this grant seminar. I've been with the office now for 3 years. And for those of you who are unfamiliar with the Governor's Grants Office, we provide resources, trainings, information, assist with research, etc., on all things grant related in the state of Maryland. We work with our partners such as the Nonprofit Institute, who we love, and the College of Southern Maryland. The libraries are always very helpful resources, so we're excited that they're partners with today's event. But we have lots of, nonprofit folks, partners, and successful people who are here to help and assist and champion the work that you guys are doing. And we're very, very excited that Jennifer Jones is going to be presenting today. For those of you who have never seen Miss Jones present, you're in for a big, big treat. She is an exceptional presenter and a dear friend. So we're really excited to have her join the Nonprofit Institute today. And I just wanted to spend a few minutes to thank everyone for supporting this training and the seminar with on behalf of the Nonprofit Institute in the state of Maryland. We are partners in your success, and if there's anything that my office can do to assist you in this effort, please reach out. I think a lot of our contact information might be available on the website for the Nonprofit Institute and perhaps included at some point in the slides. But if anyone is taking notes, I can put in the chat box our web information and email address. If there's any follow-up or questions, concerns, I'm available. And I just wanted to give you guys a good welcome on this Friday. Enjoy the training. You're in for a treat. And I just wanted to thank Kara for inviting me to join you all this morning. So enjoy the day and thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you, Jennifer. We're so glad you could join us today. Also, you may see there are two other folks you may not see their faces, but you'll see their names, Rodney and Perry. They are two of our wonderful IT guys at the College of Southern Maryland, and they are here to rescue us should anything go wrong. But I'm really grateful to them. They are extremely helpful, and thanks for being here so much. I'm about ready to introduce our presenter for the day, but first, a couple of housekeeping items. Today's event is interactive, so please feel free to ask questions in the Q&A box during the presentation. The more questions, the more answers, and ultimately the more interactive this will be. The now familiar chat box is open too, and there will be several points during the seminar where Jennifer Jones will solicit feedback through that chat box, and questions can go in there as well too, and Robin and I will be monitoring those so nothing will get lost. And the most important thing here is relax. We are here to learn, exchange ideas, grow, and maybe have some fun. So it's my pleasure to introduce our presenter for the day, Dr. Jennifer Jones. A little bit about Dr. Jones. She is a transformational leader, a business strategist, a legislative advocate, a writer, an orator, and she serves as president and CEO of Kydra International Strategic Business Solutions. It's a boutique consulting firm that provides strategic planning, training, education, commercial finance, and business development in the government contracting, political, nonprofit, and emerging business markets. She is a noted philanthropist, a community servant, a strategist, an executive coach, and a very gifted communicator. Whether providing nonprofit funding and sustainability trainings, or leading a community initiative, or serving as the managing member of Jones Mitchell and Associates, LLC, her transference of knowledge gleaned in medicine and research into other professional arenas, including workshop facilitation, training, and full life cycle recruiting, speaking, consulting, coaching, and the culinary arts is evident. Her eclectic mix of thoughts, views, and opinions are shared as a highly sought speaker with audiences throughout the country. She was co-host of her weekly broadcast show, Truth 360, and has convened a host of conferences, meetings, and symposia. Jennifer is known among women regionally, nationally, and internationally as a community servant and passionate advocate for women and families. In her role as chair of the Prince George's County Commission for Women, she championed the needs of women, girls, and their families through programs in education, health, empowerment, domestic violence, and human trafficking. Her legislative advocacy and work with county, state, and federal government leaders has enriched the work of nonprofit, business, faith-based, and service organizations. She has contributed significantly to the realization of the Global Vision Community Medical Center, Family Justice Center, Prince George's County Family Justice Center, and human trafficking task forces and several other community programs, initiatives, and activities. She's a member and affiliate of several service organizations, including the Iota Gamma Omega chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority, Zonta Club of Mid-Maryland, Zonta International, Black Women's Roundtable, National Coalition for Black Civic Participation, Business and Professional Women, Southern Prince George's, and Sisters for Sisters Network. Cornerstone to her life's work is her faith and a love for music, arts, fitness, and entertainment. She is a member of the First Baptist Church of Glenarden in Upper Marlboro, Maryland, a devoted wife, and a proud mom of 2 sons. Not sure when she sleeps. We are so pleased to welcome Jennifer Jones. Thank you for sharing your knowledge, insight, and wisdom with us today.
Thank you so much, Cara. It has been an absolute joy and pleasure to get to today's 15th annual grant training seminar. And just for the record, I learned a long time ago, you can do a lot, you just can't do it all at one time. Good morning to everyone who is here with us to join us and participate in this 15th annual grants training seminar. So let's get started. The Nonprofit Institute at the College of Southern Maryland is a world-class organization that has assembled for you a collection of resources and knowledge to help. Today, I am elated to join you to present to you a nonprofit roadmap to success. So today's seminar is intended to be fun, it's intended to be informative, and it's intended for you to have questions and follow up so that we can learn and grow together and support you. This is a roadmap to funding success that was designed more than 15 years ago. And despite all of the technology advancements and all of the resources and tools and all of the knowledge and growth, I have found that these steps on a roadmap to funding success are still important. I'll share more with you about this roadmap, but for purposes of the seminar, what I want you to see, hear, and know is that the roadmap to funding success begins with determining what your funding needs are. And then you travel through a process of identifying funding opportunities and sources and really understanding that you're going to need to have a very good strategic program. You're going to need to have relationships to collaborate with other organizations, businesses, groups, partners, and peers. That you're going to need to have a brand and a celebrity face and a mission. You're going to need to be able to pursue funding in a myriad of ways, not just grant funding, but to have an entire funding and sustainability plan. In addition to that, there will be times that you're going to want to celebrate and highlight the advancements, progress that you've made in the communities that you serve. All of these things collectively position you to provide you the story, the experience, the data, the impact. All can be shared in a logic model to be able to secure grant funding and increase your ability to pursue and secure other kinds of funding. And so, true to my presentation, and even with what I just shared with you on the roadmap, I'm going to share with you 2 or 3 Jenniferisms. And I call these Jenniferisms because they are thoughts that just came to me that if I could say one word to a group and audience like this, what would it be? And my favorite Jenniferism is your nonprofit business is a business. So before I go on to talk about all of the elements that we'll be addressing and discovering today, I thought it was important for me to highlight why I call the Nonprofit Institute at the College of Southern Maryland world-class. Because when you look at all of the other websites that are in existence for nonprofit resources and tools and support, You have this amazing, amazing organization that has provided for you a number of really important resources and assets. The first is the Nonprofit Institute has value. It provides programming and consultations to enhance the effectiveness and success of the organizations that join, participate, and work with it. What I love most is that they convene director circles and roundtables, affinity groups, trainings, and conferences, all to promote communication. Its monthly newsletter is valuable because it's a resource that you can go back to, like the website. But the networking and the peer-to-peer engagement that happens through the director circles, roundtables, and affinity groups is first class. In addition to that, they provide tools and resources that enhance your organization, whether you're looking for growth or need growth in the area of your board, if you need more outreach, growth, stability, volunteer pools, management, and staff training. All of these resources come out of the Nonprofit Institute. In addition to that, the benefits, and I just pulled this quote from the website and want to share it with you today. The Nonprofit Institute introduces strategies to build stronger boards, more effective outreach, financial growth and stability, an active pool of volunteers, more effective management, practices and engagement, support of colleagues, and achievement of educational goals, and effective staff training. I think that it's just awesome when you have this tool and resource, and I hope that you take advantage of everything that I'm going to give to you today, as well as the resource and jewel that you have in the Nonprofit Institute. So who's in the room? This is something that normally I would allow individuals to stand up and pop up in a room and share who they are and why they are seeking training through this grants conference. So what I'm introducing to you today to accommodate our virtual experience is the chat room rapid fire questions. So they're just going to be fun and friendly questions to allow you to use your chat room and to be able to respond. If this is your first time using Zoom, the chat room it should show up at the bottom or top of your screen. And if you click on it, it will allow you to communicate with others. So here's our first rapid fire question. And when we begin to answer, Robin is going to chime in and share with us some of your feedback. Our first chat room rapid fire question is, what is your area of service and your title in the organization? Are you working on breast cancer? Are you helping with children's education? We'd love to know, who are you and what are you able to share with us? What's your title? I want to know, am I talking to executive directors? Am I talking to individuals who provide development programming? Just who are you and what are you sharing? Robin, are you seeing any feedback in our chat room?
I'm starting to. We've got quite a range. We have environmental groups, program coordinators, directors. Everybody's typing in so fast we can't get them all. Behavioral health, recovery, social services, local youth, Christian outreach programs, substance abuse, aluminum organization, homelessness, justice for homeowners, school programs, Sunday school, home care for adults. The range is incredible, and we have board members and volunteers as well as directors and staff. So quite an impressive group. They continue to add into the chat room. Program leader, National Alliance on Mental Illness, community pool rescue. It goes on and on. A great group.
That's wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. It's so good to see such a diverse audience and such a diverse group of leaders, both from government and from corporate and from nonprofit organizations, corporations. Thank you so much. So today's course has 4 basic components. One is business basics. is the business basics are intended to show you and highlight for you the actual business mechanics that make up and justifies why I say your nonprofit business is a business. Then we're going to delve a little bit further in our 102 course summary that allows us to talk about business development, that your nonprofit organization is a business that needs a plan of action, not only for the organization, but to develop the business. Then thirdly, we're going to talk and dive deeper about the 4 major categories of funding and sustainability. We will spend a tremendous amount of time on grant funding, but I also want to make sure that I've given you some nuggets and pearls of wisdom on funding and sustainability. And then finally, I'm going to leave you with a funding focus, a kind of summary of all that we've talked about, and a path forward or next steps that you can take to increase and enhance your funding. Let's get started. Part 1, Business Basics 101, a foundation for success. So remember that I said your nonprofit business is a business. And so what we find in the nonprofit community, especially for new nonprofits that are starting, is that in the beginning, you have this passion. There's something that draws you or pulls you into pursuing the work in the areas that you have, whether it was a job that led you in that direction, an employment opportunity, or a foundation that you built from the ground up, or an existing entity that you join. You find affinity and attraction for things that you're passionate about. So in the beginning, it's easy almost to have a vision, and defining a mission is where the work is. To know, I want to do something about kids who need more strength in the STEM area, or I want to do something to help individuals who are experiencing health challenges from cancer, or I want to do something to help tamp down the obesity epidemic that's clouding our country. Right now, we're in the midst of a global health pandemic with COVID-19. And so because of COVID-19, food insecurity has become a major need and a major challenge. So much so that there was a $200 million pot of funding put in place by FEMA and several other organizations that include the United Way. It includes the American Red Cross, the Jewish Federation of America, the National Council of Churches, the Salvation Army, and United Way Worldwide, so that those organizations could push funding in a very streamlined manner to local organizations that are in their networks already, so that people could just have access to food. So when you see those long lines and you see that the food is continuing to be sustained and we still are not out of the woods, that's because there was a plan in action and a funding process and mechanism put in place. Well, the same is true. And so that's why it's important to go from the vision of your nonprofit and the mission that I encourage existing nonprofits to go back and revisit your vision and mission, because it gives you energy and it gives you kind of a reconnectedness to why we're doing this work. But when you come up with that idea, if you're forming a new nonprofit, you have to choose a name and colors and logo and all of that really fun stuff that carries you and brands you. But then it's important for you to go swiftly from your passion and turn that into a strategy and do the planning that's necessary to do the capacity building to be effective. When you're in the beginning or the planning stages of a nonprofit, you ask yourself questions. How am I going to do it? What do I need? Who is going to help me, and who am I really trying to serve? There's a tremendous amount of energy right now around the reentry community, because the federal government has made some decisions to try to do more and provide more resources, as well as a number of corporations, to help with the employment crisis that we're in, that has been personified exponentially by COVID-19. So it's important that you take that sense of purpose and all of those reasons and transition them into structure, infrastructure, programs, a development or funding apparatus, and an ability to not only make an impact, but to assess that impact, because that's where you get value. And the value from assessing your impact results in more funding. This is one of my favorite charts because it is a functional, organizational, and operational chart for the core elements that every nonprofit needs. So when you look at this chart, it shares three major things. You see that in the green boxes, we have the core elements that you need to incorporate a new nonprofit. You must have a board chair, you must have a secretary, and you must have a treasurer. In addition to that, the board, which serves as the governing entity for a nonprofit, can have the chair serve, if it's a working board, as the leader, or you can choose and hire and/or appoint an executive director. What's important about that is that the executive director in many instances becomes the face of your organization. That's the person that's going out to pursue funding. That's the person that's building relationships. That's the spokesperson for the organization. In addition to that, there are 4 core categories of existence and elements that a nonprofit needs. The secretary for a nonprofit is not just the secretary to keep the board minutes, board communications, and manage documents for the nonprofit, but the board secretary is a bit of a communications director. Now, you can hire a person to serve in a communication capacity, but what's important and relevant to funding is that you realize that your nonprofit organization is going to need to have a public relations and marketing solution. It's going to need to have an IT and social media component. It's going to need to have media relations. When you host an event, when you go to serve people that you serve, it's always wonderful to just send out a press release. You never know when local news may come to put a camera on you. And now with so much happening in the virtual and digital media space, you can sing and tell your own story. So you need to have a communications plan to brand and market, because people want to connect. People give to what they know about. So when you hear and see those feel-good stories and those amazing organizations that step up to provide essential needs for individuals, whether it's on the news or in an article or in a post in social media, all of those things say, hey, I can give my $20. And hey, $20 doesn't sound like much, right? But when you're trying to raise funds and you have 20,000 people in your database who all gift you $20, that's a really wonderful pop of $400,000. So that's just my tidbit for why having a strong communications component is necessary. Next, we have development. So often we hear of the director of development, and I saw several of the individuals here who serve in that capacity. That is the person that's responsible for your nonprofit funding campaign, that manages and maintains your opportunity for how you're going to make sure that you sustain yourself. We've seen through COVID-19 that there's been a reduction and a decline in giving, in individual giving, but an uptick in giving from high net worth donors, from corporations and the like, for some initiatives to help with everything from food insecurity to testing services to providing for the needs of families who are suffering during this pandemic. The unemployment. In addition, the Director of Development is responsible for maintaining your collaborative network, making sure that your friends and partners are touched, and responsible for the events management that you do, whether it's a fundraiser or other activities, and can be responsible for your volunteers and your members in your organization. So they're the touch point for your organization. In addition, you have the treasurer that serves as a finance director. Now, the board can have a treasurer and have a finance director, but what's important is that you need to constantly maintain your operational budget for the organization, be able to report your 990s, tracking all of the reporting that you need to do, your audited financials. And then for every program that's in your organization, you need to be able to have a budget for that program, because when you get ready to apply for grants, you're going to find you need that operational budget to say, this is how much revenue our organization manages annually. You're going to need that documentation in your 990 of those things, and you're going to need to be able to create a budget for the specific funding categories that grant applications have. This is also true in the sponsorship world. And then finally, the Director of Programs, who I like to say is the most important person. Sometimes an executive director serves as that person, and sometimes you can actually have leaders, program leaders or directors for every area and line of service that you have. But what's important is that every program of service has its core function, has a capability for training, educating, and bringing more resources and people together, understands what its resource needs are to function. If you have an after-school program, and now those after-school programs have had to morph into providing and shipping materials and supplies to the students who have been connected with them. And so in that process, you need to know, if I have 50 kids coming to my program a week, then I need to have X amount of supplies and tools. I need X number of computers. Those simple resource assessments is what your program directors or leaders need to do. And then the most important thing is maintaining data. How many people are we touching? What kinds of improvements are we seeing? What kinds of outcomes are we getting? They are the person who really drives the logic model of what you put in, what resources you bring to the table, and who is your target demographic, so that you can clearly know what your outcome is. This organizational chart, I call it a hybrid, because it brings together the core needs that incorporation requires, but it also gives you the elements that a foundation needs to be successful. Then the last that I want to highlight, and I think most importantly, is when it comes to having a board, is having a foundation advisory committee. This is an entity that you can use for capacity building, relationship building, resources and assets that you need. An example is inviting an attorney to sit on your advisory committee. They may not have the capacity to serve officially on your board and meet the requirements of the meetings, and perhaps you have some contribution goals for every board member. That's not able to be, they may not be able to serve there, but just by putting them on your foundation advisory committee, they're a resource that you can pick up the phone and call when you have a legal matter. And so creating an advisory component to your nonprofit is another crucial and critical way to build capacity, and it can absolutely benefit funding by in-kind donations, resources, access to facilities. And in this time of COVID-19, anytime that you're going to need supplies and materials to gather people and bring them together, PPE is going to be critical. And there are organizations right now that are making sure that PPP is available for people who are essential employees and the like. So this is our new normal, and we have to grow, learn, and adjust. So business basics. As I shared with you, your nonprofit business is a business. And so every business needs a business plan. And so this slide is just to put a pin in, is if you are operating without a business plan, it's okay if you're being impactful for the moment. But I encourage you that if you want to get serious about growing your organization, expanding your organization, or taking your organization to the next level in terms of your funding and fundability and impact, you absolutely need to have a business plan. And that business plan needs to encompass all of the things we just talked about in our functional, operational, organizational chart. And that is everything from who are you to what are you doing, who are you serving, who are you touching, do you have some social entrepreneurial components to your organization? Are you selling something? Are you providing a service that is paid so that you're bringing resources and funding into the organization? You're going to need a marketing plan. You're going to need to do a competitive analysis. I tell my clients on the for-profit and nonprofit side, one of the most important things is having a competitive and demographic analysis to really know who else is doing the work in my area of focus. What are they doing? What's working? What's trending? What's happening? Having that research about your industry and knowing your industry well. Many times in the nonprofit organizations, especially private foundations, you're so busy with the doing business that you're not paying attention to the trends. And as you know, if you're not paying attention in the business mindset to trends and what's coming, you may find yourself being locked out of opportunities because you didn't prepare. In addition to that, we also want to make sure that we do a demographic analysis where we really take the time to present to know who's our target audience. What's happening with our target audiences? What changes are coming? Anybody that was working with young students, especially early childhood, middle school, and high school students, this entire global health pandemic has shifted how you have to work with them. That's an example of constantly keeping your finger to the pulse. And then you've got to also know your business components, your business elements, and you've got to know exactly who, what, when, where, how, and why you're serving. You've got to know who's leading, who's doing what. Do I have enough people, resources, assets, and do I have a great volunteer base? And then finally, every organization should have a plan for growth. Even if your organization simply makes blankets, weighted blankets for cancer patients, and that's what you do. You need to constantly be thinking about growing, that if you're making the blankets effectively, perhaps you can sell some in the commercial marketplace to bring in more funding to be able to donate more to individuals who are low income or unable to have the resources that they need. And then finally, financial projections. So I'm providing this snapshot about the business plan because I wanted you to know and clearly understand how important it is to have these business basics covered. So now I have another chat room rapid fire question. For all of you who are in the room, can you please just let us know, are you a new nonprofit or a well-established nonprofit?
You're coming in fast and furious already. We've got the fastest typist in the world here. New, several established. We have more established than new. New nonprofit, 9 years established, well established, 45 years old. New 5 years, 23 years, well established, 40 plus years. It's a good mixture of new and well-established organizations or early on organizations. 11 years established. Yep, looks like we're across the board.
That's awesome.
It is.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Robin. So the reason I asked is because the next slide just simply provides a highlight about organizations, and the points and pointers that I give for you to do a litmus check about business basics is a little bit different for new nonprofits versus established nonprofits. So I'm just going to highlight them. In terms of business basics, you want to make sure that you have your articles of incorporation, your EIN numbers, the list of board members, your 501c3 letter of determination, your business plan, and all of these tools at your fingertips. You're going to need to have a website and a social media presence and a digital strategy, as well as traditional brochures, business cards, and the like. In terms of infrastructure, you're going to need to have a functional operational chart. I like to tell new nonprofits, build an organizational chart the way you think you want your organization to be. And in the beginning, you may only have a nonprofit of 1 or 5 or 10 people serving in multiple categories. But if you grow, you're going to be able to hire people into those categories. In addition, you need to do the bylaws. You need to have every single thing about your determination. All of those things you're going to need to have together. For products and services, you're going to need to be able to do a competitive analysis, have an analysis-based format to deliver your programs well, and thinking about social entrepreneurship, that in addition to having your program, have something that you can put on the shelf that you can sell to generate that passive income, whether it's a t-shirt, a product, a water bottle, something simple or something more complex. It's allowed because your nonprofit business is a business. In addition to that, make sure that you have an execution and engagement strategy about the population of individuals that you serve, the customers, the members, the funders. It's really important. And then finally, you gotta know your need. What are the statistics saying about the area that you're working in? What kind of impact are you making? What kind of growth is happening? In addition, you're gonna need to be able to have measurable outcomes. So if you say that you're going to work with children and students in STEM, then there needs to be some kind of growth that you've gone from what's your plan for outreach, how many children are you working with, and now in the virtual world, being able to create programming that can be measured across a virtual world. I have a client who provides fitness for youth athletes. And so during the COVID-19, they had to make a transition that they had their students working out collaboratively across Zoom. So they would all join Zoom at the same time, have a really wonderful opening and weigh-in, and then they would work out with a coach through their Zoom. And so they were able to manage and monitor their weight and progress during this downtime and stay engaged and active in their athletic program. That's an example of transitioning what you do into something that fits in our new normal. For established nonprofits, everything or the majority of what you should be doing is making sure that you are reviewing and evaluating and assessing your nonprofit. Look at the organization to make sure that your basics are covered, and wherever you have gaps, that in that place you need to do something to improve, enhance, or make more streamlined and efficient all of the things that you do. In terms of your infrastructure, it is so important to evaluate and assess your board members. If your bylaws call for a transition of board members, and if there are people on your board who have gotten to a place where they love the organization, but they don't have the same amount of time or commitment, then allow them to be able to transition. In addition to that, learn to celebrate the people who served on your board, put them together with your existing board so that they can share information. In addition to that, we often forget, and I'll talk about this more, to touch our volunteers and staff and other individuals. It is so important that we provide the resources for individuals to be able to grow and to learn and to evolve. It's very important that you look at the performance of your board, of your staff, and your volunteers, and champion them, and give them an opportunity to grow, to be coached, to be trained, so that they can be more effective for the organization. When you look at your products and services, I say to every client, it's always important to just have a day, a morning that you go through your business plan, pull it off the shelf, knock the dust off, or pull it up online and go through it and just make sure that you're following the path and course that you set. And even if you've had to evolve into something new and different, update the business plan to reflect the new changes. Always have a strategic plan for the new year, for quarterly, and even monthly. Have action items and action lists of what you need to do, programs of service. And then for the execution and engagement, create stakeholder engagement updates. It is so important to send thank yous, e-newsletters, pictures. Even if you just send one picture with a caption, it means the world to the people who give you money, in addition to the reporting and other things that they require. And then finally, make sure that you're keeping up and tracking your numbers well, because if you're an established organization, you know that outcome, impact really drives future funding. So that concludes my business basics part. So I'd like to pause to give everyone in our audience an opportunity for questions and answers. If you have not done so, please use the question and answer chat box to be able to proceed with questions and answers.
And Jennifer, we do have a question.
Yes.
And that is, how often should bylaws be reviewed and or updated?
I think review annually, but update it every 2 to 3 years is really good, even 5 years. As often as the terms are for your board, if you have a staggered term limit for your board members, or if you turn over your board and it should be done in a staggered way every 2 to 3 years, each time that there's a turn of the board, there should be some meeting, some 1 hour conversation just to review and refresh the board, the bylaws, and make changes. But in terms of a complete revision or overhaul or amendment to your bylaws, those things happen on an as needed basis. You can have bylaws for 15 years that were developed so comprehensively and so broadly that you don't have a need to revise them often. But you should be looking at your bylaws and making sure that your organization is operating within those bylaws.
We have another question, and this is a question we get a lot at the Institute as well. How do I find board members?
So you please feel free to share as well, Cara. My philosophy about an organizational chart for your organization is the same about your board members. I always advise my clients to think about what you need when you're thinking about board members, and you've just got to be shameless and ask. And then I'm going to give you a couple of examples. So I think that every board should have some kind of accountant or CPA member. Every board should have some kind of legal or lawyer member. Then, depending on the area that you work in, you would like to have subject matter experts to be on the board. A great place to find board members is in your Chamber of Commerce and other business circles, because those individuals often have resources that they can contribute to you, even if they don't have a tremendous amount of time. In addition to that, you've got to be the expert in your area. So if you are providing a health service, then you absolutely need to make sure that you have some nurses, doctors, and relevant clinical professionals to be a space for that voice on your board. In addition, thinking about IT is so profound right now. Identifying an IT person, even young university, college students are great. But if you go to an IT firm and you ask the owner of that firm to allow you to meet, talk to them and tell them what your needs are, most times they will gift you a person even to that they'll have the seat on your board, but they'll gift you an employee or some resources and support and help. So you have to be creative, but don't hesitate to when you go to conferences and there's a keynote speaker, to asking that keynote speaker if they have the capacity to serve on your board. Ask collaborative partners who may be a part of larger organizations to come and join your board. It's a labor of love, but if you take the time to create board terms, conditions, requirements, expectations, and give a person who's been invited to be on the board kind of that snapshot of what being a board member means, you'll find whether it's a church member, a member in a sister organization, or just someone in your local community, you have to do the outreach and choose wisely, because your board members can make the difference for your organization. Kara, do you have anything else you want to share?
No, I was going to, so we usually tell folks to have someone with an accounting, CPA background and a legal background. And because my area is, marketing promotions, I always advise trying to get somebody who knows that world too. Someone who can help take care of those things. But if you get a well-rounded group of people, the other thing I would say too is in local election years, be careful, because a lot of times people running for office want to, stack their resumes and they want to get on board. And we've seen it happen. So, you have to sort of be careful of who you, allow onto your board. There are a bunch of questions coming in.
Yes.
One that's related to a business plan, but there's a bunch related to the board. So maybe I'll skip that one for now, but we will come back to the business plan question just to keep it on topic here. And the first one is, do you advise term limits for board members?
Absolutely. I believe in term limits for board members. And let me share what I mean by that. You don't want to, sometimes in boards you get into disagreements and conflicts. Don't let those kinds of things drive you in terms of creating term limits because somebody's been in one place for such a long time. But what I encourage is that you not lose history, intellectual property, and information when you are transitioning your board. So I like the staggered approach of having persons on the board, like the chair of your board may remain for some time until they become emeritus. But in terms of your functional active board members, you need like 2 to 3 years of service for the person to come onto the board, get acclimated to the board and the organization, and then to really be able to make an impact. And then I like that 3rd year to be able to kind of what I call rest in seeing the jewels and outcomes of their service on your board. But you absolutely benefit from having terms where every year you can have 2 or 3 people leaving and 2 or 3 people joining, so that it's staggered, so that you don't have everybody finishing in 2 or 3 years. And so it's important, and I think it's a great question. These are all great questions.
Here's another one. Have you ever seen a board where the members only change when they resign?
Yeah, that's what I call boards that if a board is active and they are helping the organization's mission be achieved, then I have no problem with the board member staying. If you're working and getting it done, let the board member stay. But where you can bring on new energy and new blood when it's an active and productive board is in committees and in that advisory board. Now, if a board member or members of the board itself is not effective, what I mean by effective, they're not leading, they're not meeting and convening, they're not raising funds, they're not building capacity in the programs, they're not charting an annual vision for goals and objectives, then that board is not active. And I believe in creating something I call the emeritus committee. And you thank those individuals, you celebrate them, and you transition them on. That's why it's so important to have bylaws that govern terms, that govern elections. And unfortunately, the politics happen everywhere, even in well-meaning nonprofit service organizations. And so it's waters that you can navigate from a positive perspective by bringing in board trainers. If you find that you have a board that is not rising to expectations and rising to the needs of the organization, bringing in a board training individual to be able to say, here's what we expect from you. And then having that board training then do an evaluation and kind of a one-on-one thing in addition to the group thing allows people to do some introspection and grow. And so at the end of the day, a board is convened to start, incorporate, and serve an organization. And if that's not happening, there's a creative and positive way to transition people off without offending people, hurting their feelings, and or getting into these battles that destroy organizations.
So I think I think you answered some of it, but I'm going to read the question anyway because of the way it's worded. It's good. How can you legally replace some board members who are unproductive but still cling to their positions? They're all so-called volunteers, and their stay with their positions has hampered progress.
Absolutely. And so what I just shared did, but I'll underscore, the first place to go is to your bylaws and see what your bylaws say about board terms, board limits, and the like. There are times when you do need to get a mediator or a legal or governmental entity involved when there has been illegal actions by a board, misappropriation of funds and the like, or when the board is hindering the progress of the organization. And so if the board is significantly hindering the progress of the organization, you may be able to get a way in, and it's a business process that is legal, that is going to need to be defined. And so ideally, what I want to say is don't get in a board meeting and say, we're going to sue you. What you need to do is talk to a legal professional and have them let you know what kinds of documents and evidentiary information they're going to need to be able to go and have the legal injunctions file and the other processes to allow you to remove people that are harmful. I always like to say you get more bees with honey rather than vinegar. And even when you're in the hilt of frustrations, training, bringing in outside individuals, consultants to be able to do the teaching so you can check the box and say you were aware that 990s needed to be done every year, or you were aware that this needed to be done. You're not performing, and so we're going to have to correct it and give the person, the problematic person or persons, an opportunity for course correction in the best interest of the organization, kind of the same way that the courts operate in the best interest of children.
Okay, here's another one. What is the best practice for following up with board members to ensure that they are contributing in the manner that they promised? Including professional skill and leveraging their connections.
I think that most times when you're working with a board member and the board member is non-responsive, rarely is it because they don't have good intentions. It's usually a time or some kind of distraction, even a positive one like work and business and other obligations. And so the best thing to do, I think, always is to pick up the phone and have a more personal conversation before you make it a board group meeting, letter writing to recuse the person from the board. Most times if you talk to people and say, just doing a litmus check, how are you doing? We have some needs from you. Here they are. and move forward, because I have found most times when people are serving on the board, they have not had very clear expectations in the beginning. Or when a person is a part of a board and they are going to the meetings, they're writing their check, they're bringing donors, they show up at the annual gala and event, and you're not asking them to functionally do something, then that means that that person is not feeling engaged, enthusiastic, and committed. In addition to that, I found if you welcome board members to lead and play a role in the organization itself, even if it's just doing the welcome, even if it's just doing a small task, it's about connectedness. And human nature is human nature. When people feel a part of and included in something, they usually step up and rise to the occasion, or they come to the realization that they don't have the time and the original commitment, and they recuse themselves. And then you can replace them with someone who is able to give you what you need from a board member.
Here's another one. What should you do if an organization or if a board member reaches a term limit, okay, and no one else is willing to fill the role?
Ask that person if they're willing to serve, to continue to serve, and you can even make accommodations to say, will you continue to serve on a quarterly basis as we're trying to find someone, or can you refer someone? And when you have difficulties finding board members, most of the time, it's because people are not clear about the expectations that you have for them. Sometimes you can scare a person away with the meeting requirements and the dollar requirements. And so if you have some good people who are willing to come and do one part, then perhaps that's an opportunity to think about revising your bylaws so that your bylaws can actually allow you to expand your board. And maybe one person was a gregarious champion, and you might need to replace them with 3 people and give those 3 people much smaller commitments to that. And then there are some things that we have board members. And Cara just said the same. I always encourage having a legal representative, an IT representative, marketing, as well as accounting. I mean, every need that you have, you should have a board member that can help you. So you need space, and someone owns a building that you can meet in and have events in. I mean, whatever you need, that's what you should do to bring to your board resources to support the organization. And when you're doing that, I think that there's nothing wrong with, from time to time, hiring and paying for the services, and let that board member have oversight. Perhaps the CPA that was on your board has grown his accounting practice and is no longer able to provide you the intimate level of reporting. So you may need to pay for that billable service from his employees or from someone else. So I think while we look for board members to contribute to the organization, like any business, you've got to outsource sometimes.
Yeah, and there was a question here. You did mention having someone IT related on your board. Do you need an IT person and or an IT lawyer for the nonprofit?
Well, there are a lot of, when you have a website and a database that's capturing information, when you have a donor management system, you do need legal language from time to time. And so you can usually, you don't need to have the board member be an IT legal expert. That's an outsourceable thing, that if you need to write some clauses and disclaimers and terms for your website or for your digital kinds of things, you can outsource that. That's a one-shot service. Once they do it, they might refresh it every couple of years. But in terms of having an IT person, I just think in this virtual age, it's something that you need. I mean, I have people who do logos for me, not just one, logos for me. I have people who do flyers and other graphic design for me. Then I have people who help my clients build their websites. And so I have people who can put up a wonderful website kind of splash pagey, and I have people who can create these extensive, one of my clients during COVID-19 needed telemedicine and needed to have an interface with a better patient portal than the one that his telemedicine service provided. So we had to go with an expert. So it's a high dollar kind of service. So the recommendation is, if you don't put them on your board, at least have them be an advisor or some student that you give a stipend to, that's just going to help you stay relevant, because you have so many needs, from surveys, from doing a Zoom webinar. You know, if you don't have IT support, it could be a real tenuous experience for a busy person running another component of the nonprofit. To be able to sit on the phone with the Zoom representative to help you and answer your questions could be laborious. So it's my recommendation that just try to think of what your nonprofit needs and see if you can find a board member or an advisory committee member who's willing to do that for you and support you before you start taking money out of the coffers to pay for those services, which could be expensive.
Okay, there's a few more questions related to boards, and then I will come back to the 2 questions about business plans.
Okay, wonderful. And we're going to take 5 more minutes so that we can move to the next phase, but absolutely, go right ahead.
How does one establish a committee on a board to deal with unexpected incidents such as criminal activity?
Establish a committee. If there's a board, for example, of 9, and one person has committed something, you usually, with the larger board, have more than just a chair, secretary, and treasurer. So you may have other positions that you can huddle together. But before I do anything, I get a lawyer. That's the best way, by going straight to an attorney to say, this is something that we think is happening on our board, and help us. Because for you to try to just deal with it internally, I think is too much. And especially if the lawyer that's on your board is the person doing the criminal activity, you need someone equally smart who can compete with all of the checks and balances necessary. But get a lawyer first. Next question.
And if anybody wants to reach out to me via email, I can share an experience I had serving on a board where we were embezzled by our treasurer. And what we did, we didn't know what we were doing. And we contacted police and we got a lawyer, and we did end up getting that person into jail for 30 days and paid everything back. So I don't want to go into that, too much detail here, but if anybody wants to talk about having gone through that, please do reach out. Another question is, how do you address an issue where an executive director repeatedly brings on members who represent similar points of view, skills, etc.? How do you override this person to add more diversity of all kinds instead of more of the usual?
So the diversity and inclusion question has always been a unique and challenging one. And I truly, philosophically, this is a personal philosophy, I believe that you don't change other people, you change your behavior. And what I mean by that is that there is a requirement that you have for your programs, for your interests, whether you make it a bylaws revision interest, that when we do certain things, we want a diverse audience. I believe in a two-folded answer. One is, anytime an executive director is behaving in a manner that is not in alignment with the wishes of the organization by virtue of its bylaws, mission and vision, and board, then there needs to be the soft touch conversation and then the more formal process to correct and course correct the action. And then at the same time, there are things you can do, like forming a diversity and inclusion committee and determining whether you want to make diversity and inclusion something that you go all the way to the bylaws revision level for, which requires some voting and some forms and the like, or if you want to have the individuals on a committee, a diversity and inclusion committee, give recommendations to the board and executive director. So if you've both talked to the executive director, soft touch before formal, and if you've put together a committee resource and or information to make recommendations, and if the recommendations are not received, then it has to become a bylaws issue. And if there cannot be any resolve and the executive director is hindering the performance and impact and effectiveness of the organization, then it's time for a new executive director.
Okay, how many board members should you have based on an organization size?
I don't think that there's a perfect board size. I just always caution this. Remember, board members have to vote according to your bylaws and meet quorums. So you can have a board as big as 25 people and get nothing done, and you can have a board of 5 people and have a powerful entity, because it depends on how you build your volunteer base for your program execution and how you build friends, memberships, and members and friends and other entities that are going to support the work of the organization. So the board size is not as important as clearly defined board goals and responsibilities and activities. And so I always choose a number like 7, 9, 12 is the largest I'll choose, but 7 is my sweet spot because it gives me room for the secretary, the chair, and the treasurer. It gives me room for the accountant and the lawyer, and then a couple of other people. And those couple of other people are subject matter experts. And I always like to include like a divergent, like a young person if it's doing services, just a kind of a voice of the people that I serve. Representative on the board, and whether that's an expert or an individual that is from the community that I serve. I think it's always great to have that person who knows intimately the value of your services in your nonprofit to be able to have a voice on your board.
Cool. Should a board approve new members?
Should a board approve? I think you have to vote. It depends on what your bylaws really say, but everything that I know, you normally have to vote on your board members unless your organization is a quasi-government entity that has oversight from some other entity. If you have a parent organization that is a for-profit entity that has oversight of your nonprofit, there may be, but from everything that I know, there's usually a process where you have had board members complete some kind of application. If it's as simple as providing their bio and their basic contact information and having some kind of ability for other members of the board to meet the person and engage them, and then there's normally a vote. And so I think that's something we could take offline and provide a little bit more help and insight to know what the specific needs are for board members.
We have one more question about boards, and then the 2 questions about the business plans.
Yes.
A follow-up to an earlier question, where might one find examples of subcommittee descriptions for bylaws, such as oversight?
There are a number of entities, and you'll see in some of the future slide decks, there's a nonprofit council. There are a number of organizations that provide all of the tools that you need for board organization and the like. And some of them are in this presentation today, and as well as that may be something we need to do offline.
Right. And the Nonprofit Institute can help as well.
Exactly. Thank you.
Okay, so 2 questions. I'm going to combine them. One person wanted to know who is responsible for developing and maintaining the business plan, and then could you highlight the differences between a nonprofit business plan and a for-profit business plan?
Yeah, so I'll take the second question second because it's easier. So in a nonprofit business plan, when I talked about the competitive analysis, when you're looking at a competitive analysis for a for-profit business, you're looking at success as measured in the for-profit space, which is about money and growth and expansion and sustainability. In the nonprofit sector, when you're looking at a competitive analysis, you're looking at the services you provide and the effectiveness of impact. and not necessarily always money, but they are generally very similar. The nuances come in, and the major difference in a for-profit and nonprofit business is the payment of taxes. And so in the financial space, and some of the way that you categorize that, and in the organizational space in terms of who's doing what in the for-profit and nonprofit business, but they are so similar. That's why I have Jenniferism, your nonprofit business is a business, because everything that you need in a for-profit business, you also need in a nonprofit business. And can you go back, Karen, and give me the first part of that question again?
Sure. It was who is responsible for developing and maintaining the business plan?
Okay, so especially for new nonprofits, whoever the person is that's organizing the nonprofit should be creating the business plan. And there's nothing wrong with doing that by committee, sharing the wealth, but the chair of the board is ultimately responsible for the organization.
Okay, that wraps up all the questions for now in the Q&A area.
All right, thanks everyone.